Okay, so this is the Automation Accelerator sheet, and it helps firms be more efficient. It looks at all your tasks and figures out and helps you prioritize, right? So figuring out what tasks you should focus on, which tasks can be delegated, and which tasks can be effectively eliminated. It has 3 tabs here: the start, the input, and the report. Before we go through each of these, I'll just quickly say I'm not going to read through the entire instructions here. Rather, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through some examples and let you actually get into it. The first tab, like I said, it explains pretty much everything I'm going through today in this video, plus a bit more. So let's go ahead and get started. And just FYI, this is a Google Sheet. So if you want to, you want to make a copy of it first, so you'll go to File, make a copy, and then that makes a copy. If you want to use it as an Excel, you can download it as an Excel as well. Some of the report doesn't really show up too great on Excel, so I highly recommend sticking with Google Sheets. Okay, so let's get started with the Input tab here. The first thing you'll notice is there's a bunch of tasks here, right? And I think we have about 50 or so tasks, right? These are just various tasks at a firm. Everything you see here, you can pretty much replace, right? If you want to start with some ideas on some of the main tasks at a lot of small to medium-sized firms, you can just use these. Like I said, just copy and paste if you need to bring things in and out. Let's just get started, just really quickly going through the columns, and I'll show you some use cases. So the first is the task description, right? So we have everything from monthly financial statements to internal audits, estate planning consultations, and then we have further down excuse me, some of the other tasks that are, as you can see here, billable versus non-billable, right? So some of the non-billable tasks are like team meetings, client referral generation, scheduling client appointments, so on and so forth, right? Functional area, pretty self-explanatory, and you can click on a drop-down for this. So compliance, advisory, sales, marketing, administrative, operations, so on and so forth. You can edit these by clicking on the little edit button, and that clicks on a drop-down here. So if I want to add another item, let's just say, I'll just make something up really quick. Let's just say HR, right? So I can click on that, type it in and add, and then click on done, and then I'll just click on apply to all, and that allows that HR to come into play here, okay? So you can just choose it as a drop down here. As I explained, billable versus non-billable, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Now, there are 3 major scores: value, leverage, and the scalability. So the value measures firm direct contribution to revenue, client retention, or long-term firm success. Okay, so how valuable is this task? Okay, so in this case, we have monthly financial statements. It gets 3 is the highest, right? So it goes from 1 to 3. 2 is basically in the middle, right? So monthly financial statements, our firm exists to do a lot more than that, but it's one of these necessary things that we do. It produces value on a basic level, okay? Leverage, so evaluates the efficiency of the task by comparing the results achieved to the effort required. So this is impact versus effort, okay? So basically, so in this case, 1, right? So it's pretty low effort here, right? And it doesn't really give a really large impact as one of these necessary things, right? So again, you want to compare really how much leverage it generates at the firm here. So if I'm not really getting a lot of large impact, maybe it doesn't move the needle for my firm, I'm just going to give it a lower score. Scalability assesses the task potential to be reused or replicated with minimal additional effort, right? So this is more looking towards things that have the potential. Think about it in an automation framework, right? So if it's something that you're doing very often, and it's something that you're going to want to basically build up over time and get more momentum out of, this is how you're going to score it here. So for example, monthly financial statements, is that something that's going to be reused or replicated? Sure, you can, in fact, you can automate that these days for a lot of clients, okay? So I'll give that a high score, because it's very highly scalable. Frequency, so this is how often. In this case, it's pretty straightforward, right? So monthly financial statements, monthly, right? Annual tax planning, annual, okay? Client payroll review. So basically, you can just choose the drop down of how frequent a task occurs. That so basically indicates how often the task is performed, helping to identify candidates for automation, okay? And as we'll see the score in just a moment, you'll see how all this comes into play. And we have, so the total score. So this scored a 6, right? So the highest score is a 9, and the lowest score is a 3, okay? Because like I said, each of these can have from 1 to 3 for each, right? So in this case, they got a 6. So let's look at why this is a 6, and I'll just close this really quick. So we can see here the formula is pretty simple, right? It just adds each of these together here, all right? And each of these are basically used for the total score here. So it's not the best, and this is going to come into our decision factor. So basically this is calculated to delegate. So remember, you can focus, delegate, or eliminate. So let's look at how this works. Without going into it too, this is all done for you, so really nothing to edit here. Just want you to understand it. So this is set to delegate because basically the idea is that if it's higher than a 7, you're going to focus on it. If it is higher than a 4, you can delegate it, and if it's under 4, you basically eliminate. Okay, so that's basically how that formula works. And feel free to pause this video, rewind to just get a better look at that, but you can see the full formula here. And then whether you should automate it or not, right? And this is another formula. So in this case, if you double click on it, by the way, you can see which cell it refers to. So in this case, it's recommending that we automate this. Why? Okay, basically the formula is that if it is daily, weekly, or monthly, likely it's a good candidate for automation. And if it's not, then it's likely it's not a good candidate. So if I do basically like a one-off, that's going to shoot it to no. So it's a pretty simple test here. And like I said, this is just like a good first pass of all your tasks. And then later you can go into each of these tasks in detail. Excuse me, just getting over the flu here. This is, like I said, so this is just basically the first, so this is the automation column here, and then you can enter in any notes as you see fit in this column. So let's kind of look at a few use cases here. So in this case here, we have, the next one is annual tax planning. So this gave a pretty high score, 7, right? And this is something that we should focus on. Now, keep in mind, by the end of this entire exercise, you're going to see which tasks you want to obviously focus on the focus ones, delegate the delegate ones, and eliminate the eliminate ones, right? But what does that really mean? I'll talk about that in a moment, but think about that as you go through this, because at the end of the day, you want to prioritize the ones that you're going to focus on, okay? So in this case, annual tax planning, you can see that this is a score that's 7, and you're going to focus on it. Not necessarily automate, right? Right now, the tech is not, in this case, it's something that you're doing annually, so it's not very often, and honestly the technology isn't really there yet to completely automate it. In a later version of this, I'll have the evaluation for tech if it's automatable. So right now it's very simple, right? We're judging automation based on frequency, not on, hey, is it possible? I know a lot of us would, hey, if there's a way that we can completely automate those 1040s, even though they're once a year, heck yeah, we'd probably do that, right? But the technology isn't really there yet. Okay, let's look at another example, maybe something that's eliminate. All right, let's look at this, internal audits. Okay, now this might be a little controversial because some of you may live and breathe internal audits, which is fine. In this case, so it's in the compliance category. It is billable. We're not really getting a lot of value, leverage, or scalability out of this, and it is a one-off kind of thing. So this is not like something that happens on a regular recurring basis. It's more like a one-off, basically like a project work kind of thing. Low score, effectively, we are going to eliminate this. And when I say eliminate, it doesn't mean you just totally cut customers off. Maybe you can do a call-out sale, or you can sell these off, or you can wind down. There's a number of different ways, things you can do with it. You can turn this into more of a subscription kind of recurring service, even though it's a project-based, which can be an interesting strategy. In this case, not a good candidate for automation. And again, you can leave any notes here. So this is really it in a nutshell. Like I said, very straightforward. You go through and do this for each, and you can sort. So for example, right now, I believe I have it sorted based on whether it's billable or not, right? So that it gives you a quick idea to see. If you're working on this with a team, I would encourage, you can actually add another column for like teammate, where you can assign each person to toggle that, or just make it a team exercise, like going through these together, okay? But each of these have a filter as well, right? So if you want to, let's just say, isolate all the one-off tasks, you click on the little filter here, and you can just go ahead and clear and just choose scroll to one-off and click OK. And that filters all the one-off tasks, okay? I'm just gonna undo that. Same thing for any other column, right? So if you see this little filter, you can do that. So if I'm gonna just sort by, or not sort, but filter by things that I wanna focus on, click on focus, and there you have it, okay? So like I said, this is pretty much it in a nutshell. The last part is just the report, and this gives you a nice little visual on what this looks like. And basically, it's cumulative in the sense that the total score is by total score. The longer the column, the longer the row, essentially, the higher the score, right? So client onboard, client meetings, why is that one of the longest there? So if we go back to the onboarding client meetings, we'll see that this is something that we want to focus on because it's very valuable. And honestly, one of the onboardings is one of the most important tasks for any firm. It's a very important thing here. So we can get a quick visual. And as you go through this, when you're done, you've eliminated things. Hopefully you should see a lot more green in this area. So this is basically how this works. It's like a quick little visual of how to actually see this entire thing here. Like I said, you start here, you go through this, you read through this, and you can see exactly how to use this and what to do.